Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We need a bit of a stretch, a bit of a deep breath. It's half time this morning, so you should be good. My name is Wilf Stinnes. I'm solutions architect with Dimension Data. I have been for 16 years. In my previous life, I was a consulting engineer. I started the smart buildings, smart cities, and now the Internet of Things practice in Dimension Data. I look after Middle East and Africa. I'm also standing here in place of Bruce Watson, who is one of Dimension Data's founder and really the driving force and executive sponsor behind this initiative. I assure you he's a lot more handsome and charismatic than I am, but for today I'll have to do. I think Franny came across the initiative that we did in a park west of Kruger. It is now in the public domain, and I'm very honored and indeed excited and with some levels of trepidation in front of such a learned audience to be telling you about what we did there. If we think around contemporary conservation, we're a technology company. So I guess when you look at us, you look at the Gizmos, you look at the technology. And indeed, very much of what we do in terms of our offering globally is an extension of what Jolene, I think, very eloquently showed you yesterday. So that image of the LiDAR, that for us is a sensor that comes into and puts a digital skin around the globe that we humans have come to put over the globe. And with that disruption becomes a whole lot of opportunity in terms of how we provide solutions, not only to our corporate clients, but also in many other spheres as well. So that here goes from the collection of data from the sensors to, and I've had some conversations with some of you around big data, about big data analytics, about machine learning, about applications. That goes into that front. Hybrid cloud or the cloud solutions is a buzzword, I guess, in IT specifically. It's not something that you're a stranger to. So if you use your Facebook or your Google Maps, and so all of that is already part of the cloud, and it is indeed a part of digitizing your own world around you in terms of your body functions, in terms of where you are, in terms of where you're going, and those kind of things. Workspaces for tomorrow is really relating to collaboration tools, communication tools, and while it obviously grew out of the corporate space for us, increasingly we find that we apply those solutions in emergency medical services and first responders in terms of disaster management and the like. And then obviously everything that we do in the digital world, in the cyberspace, has to be secured, and we are fortunate as the project team to be able to draw on our international experts in that field to make sure that what we deploy is indeed secure and safe. Just a quick snapshot of who Dimension Data are for you that aren't aware. Don't pay too much heed on the figure on the left there. We heard yesterday economic times are tough, so we don't expect that one to grow anything significant. But I think for me the key thing here is that we are obviously a proudly South African company, started over 30 years ago as a networking company here in South Africa. We're now owned by NTT globally in Japan. And also that if we look at our client base here, and that's quite critical for how we see this going forward, is that once we actually told the world about what we're doing there, once we were able to go public with it, the response we got from our client base and indeed from our own people has even exceeded what we do in the Tour de France and the Absa Cape Epic. So it's absolutely a topic that has drawn some of those big clients to us and are helping us in the spheres that are at a much higher level up in the food chain in terms of the conservation or indeed the rhino protection programs to come on board. So very encouraged by that in terms of going forward. Maybe coming back more closely to this particular project, I think it was with a chuckle that I put the slide up, because 3 of the guys that I report to either directly or with a dotted line actually spend some time in their life as a game ranger. So for the young people in the audience, it's quite clear that the conservation community does indeed breed exceptional leaders. So for us it was a matter of the heart to get involved. Obviously, wherever we work in any realm that we go, we're trying to make a difference. So we always ask ourselves, why are we doing this? What does it mean for our clients' business? And more closely to my home, the technology world is moving at an unprecedented pace. And we felt that we were at a nexus where some of these, what we call the art of the possible, could be applied to some of the problems that we face, and particularly in this conservation project. And then we also, with the global partners that we have as a technology company, we were able to bring some of those on board. And I think too that I should mention is indeed Cisco, the big networking company, to whom we're the biggest partner, and they're our biggest partner, and Intel Corporation that came on board. Taking a a step here from Jolene, Internet of Things 101, for those who aren't familiar with the term. But it really means that either new or existing sensors out there in home, in industries, in factories, etc. Also anything connected to your mobile actually gets pulled in, that gets into a data store, gets analyzed there for trends, for exceptions, and so forth, and then moved into the cloud. If we look at those predictions on the top hand left side, 50 billion devices by 2020. Now, if that seems incredulous, if current statistics show that for each human on the Earth, we've got already 1.6 digital sensor points connected to the Internet of Things in some shape or the other. But for me, the key factors in terms of why now and why it is so important right now, and why it's topical in this particular year, are the two on the bottom left here and on the bottom right. So when we started about 15 months ago in IoT, putting up a lab in Cape Town, the first, what we call a sensor head-in, which connects all these sensors to a computational device provided by Intel, was called a Galileo. It was about the size of my cell phone, and it cost us $150. So 9 months later, we bought something at half the size, double the capacity at $50. Now, the latest one we've actually deployed there is called the Curie. It's the size of my jacket button here, and it's, with apologies to Carl, it's about twice as powerful as these laptops standing over here. So that actually just opens up a whole plethora of affordability and of capability in terms of what we can do with that. So in the IoT world, we've got a number of different solutions here, and today we're particularly talking around connected conservation, but it's obvious that it draws from a number of the different areas that we are engaged with and involved in to bring that to bear on the particular situation here. So when we first got to Sabi, so you can tell by the fact that I actually put my jacket on, we mostly work in the corporate carpeted space, as we call it. We sometimes build data centers, but that's how far it goes. Fortunately for me, I also do the Absa Cape Epic, so remote. You know, for me, when we got to, it's 4.5 hours of Joburg for us, that's remote. I know for some of you that's luxury, but if we don't see 4G, we kind of get a bit edgier. And I think the one that I want to highlight here are these two really, and that is that you know, with the assertion or with the learning that about 80% of all the poaching incidents have some or other internal connection, it was quite clear that you know, the security and the access control and just knowing who's going in and out was quite a critical aspect of the solution. And obviously, for those of you who know the area I'm talking about, there's hardly any cell phone reception, hardly any connectivity and the like. So just as an example, if they wanted to view a video stream from a gate on the other side of the park, that brought the entire connectivity, the entire network and the internet connection down. So you could either do email or you could watch a camera, which kind of becomes quite difficult to operate in that way. So when we got there, I think it was for us a bit of an eye-opener for sure. I mean, as I say, we are Gizmo people. We've also had the experience of some of the big American corporations, in that case, coming to areas like Madikwe, come with all kind of fancy ideas about 6X technology and showcasing that. From day one, that wasn't what we were going to be about. So we literally sat down and said, what are your most pressing problems, and what have we got in our tool bag that might help with that? And I think the other angle that we had, we really didn't want to parachute in and parachute out, or fly out. I don't think you can parachute out. So whatever we did there, and we were very rigid about that. Anything that we would deploy, we had to be able to remotely monitor and look at the health status of it. We also had to have a 3-year budget and plan to maintain that, and also to build skills locally to actually support on the ground of whatever we put down. So here's a bit of a view, I think, how it came out.
I believe our job is to create a safe place for the rhino and other animals to roam freely.
Having a little 2-year-old that runs around every morning, first thing he goes to visit his ghost frog. He runs to the fence and he looks for his rhino that comes to visit every now and then.
And for me, that's what legacy is about, that's what heritage is about.
Three years ago, we lost a lot of rhinos, and it was almost crisis management. What do we do? How we do? We tried everything. We tried drying rhinos' horns. At the end of the day, it's retrospective. If you've heard a shot, it's too late.
Yeah, we've got a very small window. We've got maximum 5 kilometers that the guys will come in, shoot the rhino, and then leave. So that gives us, on average, half an hour.
Cisco and Dimension Data have been unbelievable in the way they've reached out and supported the approach.
Technology is a huge benefit to us. It's basically our first line of defense.
It's a game changer. It's a force. This is a very different scenario to what we would have in a pristine area with technology. This reserve is a huge area, 50,000 hectares. So I think what Dimension Data has really done is implementing workable solutions in a harsh environment like the bush to make sure that we can do the work that we do.
They're giving us eyes on our fence lines. If anyone touches the fence, they immediately give eyes to our response teams and our helicopter instantly. And they give eyes to our screens and our control rooms. You can imagine on a park this size, that is just unbelievable. And they give it instantly and rapidly. We said, we need help to be given an early warning of someone human coming in the park. That's where we want to be. We don't want to spend our time wrestling the rhino and leave him and her alone to go and do what they do, which is to roam freely and not be stressed or darted or tagged or marked.
The Wi-Fi that we've put in helps me greatly. I can be anywhere in the bush at any moment and receive a notification either via control or my tablet saying we've got an incursion here or we've picked up suspicious activity at this point, exact GPS reference with live feed, and that greatly assists me.
If a poacher tries to get into the gate and he's got a criminal record or something like that, we know about it when he's trying to get into the gate. Data analytics for us is critical. If you've got background on a person, you can be much more proactive. And the information we've got on hand is safe, it's secure, it can't be hacked. So it means we can be confident in the information we've got, and we know that it's not leaking out all over the place or somebody's selling it along the way, and the word will go out into the crime syndicates. Do not come here, stay away. This is a safe haven.
I've been in conservation a long time. I've never seen a corporation so unreservedly come to the party.
Poaching, species that are so scarce on this planet has to be front and center in the minds of responsible companies.
If there's one passionate dream I could have, and I'm a person who believes in making my dreams a reality, is to eradicate all forms of poaching. That to me would be one of the most successful things I believe I could achieve in my life.
And if we go to 0 kills in terms of the park, and we're almost there already, and we create Safe Haven, that'll be a great step forward for us all as humanity. A great step forward, for which they've made an enormous contribution.
So that's it in video format. For those who are not familiar with the area, I just thought I'd highlight some of the key components that you saw in the video. So first off is a park area network, as we call it, that connects all the key points so that communication at high volumes is possible. We also built with their help 2 computer rooms, one on the south end, one on the north end, so we have full redundancy and high availability across that. Then you saw some images in terms of a control room, so some big screens where you can then mesh up the data that's relevant either in analytic kind of perspective or when an incursion is actually or an event is alerted on. Also then the components that you saw at the gate there, which really digitize that process of being pre-registered and coming into the gate, and then obviously protecting all of that with a cybersecurity perimeter. And at the conversation at breakfast, I was hoping to allude to the fact that while we were triggered by rhino, by virtue of the fact that we protect that entire park, hopefully all the other species in there are protected against malign activity from unwanted humans coming into that park. In terms of what it meant for the park, so as I mentioned, that secure park area network was really the foundation on which we built, which is really also our strength. We collect data on an ongoing basis from all kinds of different sources. Those are the four main ones. I think maybe just on the thermal imaging, that was quite an eye-opener how important it turned out to be able to deploy some of those thermal cameras, the eyes out there, to various hotspots or anticipated hotspots as intelligence came in from around the park where hits might be planned or might be likely, especially given the fact that some of those water runoffs, the electric fence and the protection around that gets washed away, and then those areas are highly, highly vulnerable. If I had to say what was probably the biggest single aspect in terms of being preventive, it's really digitizing that entire process. So it's fully visible at all times, it's fully auditable, it's fully transparent, and as you saw in the video, it taps into various different sources of information to give the security personnel a view in terms of what's happening and where potential threats are emerging or developing, so that they could react to that. Once we do suspect an incursion or an event along the fence line, that collaboration that I spoke about is super critical, so that the various dispersed forces at that time throughout the park is known where they are. They can all have the same information. They've got full visibility of the entire picture, the entire context, and can therefore react in a very coordinated fashion. They see, as you saw, they can see what's going on various devices and then work in unison with some of the maybe more high-powered artillery to react to that and prevent further catastrophe. And I think the fact that we architected from day one in a way that we look at this as very much the hotbed and test bed, we actually refer to it as Cape Canaveral because for one reserve it's probably overkill, but the intention definitely is, and our ambition indeed is, that all promising technology or technology-related solutions or ideas can come to that park and be tested there, run through proof of concept and be developed further to become an economically viable solution that can be rolled out elsewhere, but still managed from a central position so that we don't overload or we don't get into trouble with not enough local expertise being at hand. So if we look at how we're going forward with this, I think the insights and data that we've already collected and understanding how effective we've been in fighting the syndicates with this phase, I think there's always a trick of figuring out what they will do next, so that game of chess. So we've got a few ideas up our sleeves what comes next. And I think these two are really important to understand. So as I mentioned, maybe financially, commercially overkill in what we did there, but certainly without that basis, we wouldn't be in a position to actually find out and figure out what is most effective at the most efficient price point. And then hopefully, as I said, we can export that to other areas and really start a way of using these new age type technologies and getting into quite a new space in terms of what we do there. And then lastly, I thought I'd conclude just with what I think deserves a round of applause for Selby Sands. We've now deployed for 8 months. Next week it'll be 250 days without a rhino horn being taken. So